I'm sorry, I didn't mean to knock over your coffee. The voice came in a flurry of nervous energy, followed by the unmistakable sting of heat across his chest. Alexander Royce looked down to see the remnants of a mocha latte dripping across the lapel of his Tom Ford suit, still steaming in the chilly Manhattan air. The sleeve of his charcoal wool coat was stained, and so was the start of what was supposed to be an unbreakable morning. He was already late. His driver had rerouted due to another Midtown protest, his assistant had called twice about the shareholders waiting in the boardroom, and now, coffee. A lot of it. And a stranger standing inches away, holding a crumpled napkin with shaking fingers. I said I'm so sorry, the woman repeated, reaching up instinctively to dab at his jacket. I didn't see you. Alexander opened his mouth, a retort forming in his throat, the kind that came naturally to men like him, raised in pressure, built to lead, groomed to control. But then she looked up. And the retort vanished. Her eyes were large, dark, full of something like stormlight, gentle and wild all at once. A smudge of charcoal clung to the edge of her wrist, right above a woven bracelet that looked handmade. Her black hair, still wind-tossed, framed a face caught somewhere between girlhood and womanhood. Honest. Startlingly honest. I'm okay, he said automatically. I mean, the suit's not, but I'll live. That made her laugh. A soft, breathy sound, the kind that cut through the noise of honking taxis and hurried feet and struck a chord somewhere unfamiliar in him. Alexander realized he was still holding his phone, call ended, screen black. He didn't remember ending it. Here, she said, rifling through a sketchbook under her arm. This sounds weird, I know, but I think this might help make up for it. She pulled out a single sheet and extended it with 2 fingers. He took it reflexively. It was a sketch. Rough but vivid. A man in profile, leaning slightly forward, his expression locked in thought, pain curled behind the corners of his mouth. The lines were expressive, emotional, there was power in them. The sketch wasn't perfect, but it was haunting. It looked like him. No, it was him. Same slope of nose. Same frown at the brow. Even the cut of his jawline, the tightness around the eyes, she had captured them with eerie precision. Alexander looked up again, now truly studying her. She didn't flinch under his gaze. If anything, she looked apologetic and proud. Not of the accident, but of the sketch she had chosen. Wait, how did you know I'd look like this? She blinked, startled by his question. I didn't. I sketch strangers sometimes. It calms me down. This one was from memory. I saw you once, months ago. You stood on the steps outside Bryant Park, staring at your phone like it had betrayed you. Something about the way you looked, it stayed. Alexander stared at the paper in his hand. The lines were fast, free, but so precise. She had noticed him before he ever noticed her. That never happened. I'm Alara, by the way, she added quietly, sensing his hesitation. I wasn't stalking you or anything. I just saw a story in your face that day. Alara, he repeated, folding the sketch once and sliding it carefully into his coat pocket. I'm Alexander. I know, she said, then smiled sheepishly. Your face is on the cover of Forbes. He chuckled, the sound foreign in his own mouth. Right. That. They stood awkwardly in the sidewalk flow of New York commuters, the cold air crackling with holiday tension. Alexander glanced over his shoulder. His driver was probably circling, his assistant surely panicking. But for the first time in months, he didn't care. He began, surprising himself. Can I buy you a new coffee? Yours hit the ground too, if I recall. She tilted her head, amused. You're offering to buy coffee for the girl who just ruined your $1,000 suit. That's the thing, he said, his voice softer now. I think you saved it. She raised an eyebrow. I mean my morning, he clarified. My day. My something. Alara hesitated. Well, there's a cafe right there, she said, pointing across the street. If you're really sure. They crossed together. The bell over the cafe door jingled as they stepped inside, warmth and the scent of cinnamon hitting them immediately. It was small, cozy, filled with mismatched furniture and quiet jazz. The kind of place Alexander hadn't entered in years. He always chose sterile, efficient, impersonal. But not today. They sat across from each other with mugs in hand. Alara's fingers wrapped tightly around hers, as if drawing courage from the heat. "So, you're a full-time artist?" he asked. She shook her head. "I work part-time at an art store. Sketch at night. Try to get by." Alexander studied her again. There was a gentleness about her, but not fragility. More like quiet resilience. "My parents wanted me to be a teacher," she said. "Or something sensible. But I wanted to chase the impossible. Not smart, I guess." He leaned forward. "What if I told you I did the same?" She smiled faintly. "Except your version of chasing the impossible ended with millions of dollars and boardroom seats." "Sure," he replied. "But it started with sketchpads, too. Drafting buildings I'd never see. Stealing moments from architecture books and libraries." Alara's expression shifted, curious now. She wasn't impressed by the money, the title. She wanted the why. "You ever feel like you're watching your own life from the outside?" she asked suddenly. "Like you're performing someone else's version of who you should be?" Alexander didn't answer right away. He thought of his father's voice in his head, the weight of legacy on his shoulders, the constant need to lead, to win, to never pause. "Yes," he said finally. They sat in silence for a while, the jazz looping behind them like a heartbeat. Then Alara reached into her sketchbook and tore out another page. "This one's yours too," she said, sliding it across the table. It wasn't a portrait this time. It was a city skyline, blurry around the edges, drawn as if from a train window. A single figure stood near the tracks, solitary, hunched, distant. "I call it Too Fast to Catch," she murmured. "It felt like you." Alexander stared at the sketch. He didn't know how to respond. But something in his chest twisted. Then, as he reached for his phone to silence another buzz from his assistant, Alara stood up. "I should go. I'm late for my shift." "Wait," he said, almost too quickly. "Will I see you again?" Alara looked at him, not with coyness, but honesty. "You can try," she said with a half-smile, "but I don't stay in one place very long." She turned and disappeared into the cold light outside. He didn't realize he was still holding the second sketch until the cafe door closed behind her. The moment stretched longer than it should have. The cafe's warmth buzzed around him, clinking mugs, baristas calling orders, the scrape of chairs against wooden floors, but Alexander remained still, eyes fixed on the paper in his hand like it contained some encrypted message. There was something about her drawing style. Raw. Honest. Unfiltered in a way his world never allowed. He slid the sketch into the same coat pocket as the portrait and stood up, glancing through the fogged-up window toward the street. But Alara was already gone, vanished into the crush of city life as swiftly as she'd entered his orbit. His phone vibrated again. He finally glanced at the screen, 12 missed calls from Marcus, his executive assistant. One text read. "Board moved up to 4 p.m. Need you back now. Where are you?" Alexander slipped the phone back into his coat without replying. Outside, the city moved like a machine. Yellow cabs honked. A man pushed a cart of hot pretzels. Tourists huddled beneath puffer jackets. But everything felt slower for him now, like he was no longer calibrated to the rhythm. He had built his fortune by making snap decisions, anticipating market swings, but suddenly, all of that felt muted compared to the quiet intrigue of a stranger with charcoal-dusted hands. By the time he arrived back at his midtown headquarters, the energy had shifted. The glass towers shimmered like weapons in the December sunlight. Everyone was in motion, interns carrying lattes, executives in polished leather shoes. But as he stepped into the mirrored elevator, Alexander caught sight of himself. For the first time in years, he didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a man just beginning to ask who he really was. The board meeting was uneventful, save for the moments when he caught himself zoning out, remembering the way Alara said, "I don't stay in one place very long." It haunted him. After the meeting, Marcus appeared beside him, breathless. "I rescheduled the investor dinner. You've got 20 minutes before the town hall stream. Anything else you need?" Alexander paused, his voice distant. "Actually, yeah. I need a name." Marcus blinked. "A name, sir?" "The girl I had coffee with this morning. I need to find her." Marcus frowned. "We don't have security footage of that cafe. You want us to check your car dash cam?" "No," Alexander said. "Forget it." He didn't want to involve his staff. This wasn't a business transaction. It was something else entirely, something private. That evening, alone in his penthouse apartment, he sat with the sketches spread before him on the glass coffee table. The skyline. The figure. The eyes. How could someone capture so much with so few lines? He remembered what she said. "I don't stay in one place very long." So he began checking art store directories across the city. He made a list. Then he started visiting them. Not all at once, he still had responsibilities, but in the pockets of time when no one expected him. On the 5th visit, he found it. A tiny shop in the East Village. Walls lined with sketchbooks and watercolor sets. The bell over the door chimed as he entered. A young man at the counter looked up. "Can I help you?" Alexander cleared his throat. "Do you have an employee named Alara?" The clerk shrugged. "She works Tuesdays and Fridays." "Why?" "Just wanted to return something she left behind," Alexander lied, tapping the folded sketch in his coat. The clerk nodded toward the door. "Then you're in luck. She just went out for her break, back in 10, probably." Alexander stepped outside, heart pacing in a way no boardroom ever provoked. He stood in the cold, watching the flow of people pass. Then he saw her, walking back, paper cup in one hand, scarf wrapped haphazardly, hair tousled by the wind. For a moment, she didn't notice him. Then she did. She stopped mid-step, her eyes narrowing with both curiosity and caution. "You?" "I told you I might try," he said. Alara glanced around as if expecting a camera crew. "Are you following me?" "No," he said softly. "I'm just looking for a reason to understand why I can't stop thinking about someone I barely know." She tilted her head. "That usually works better when you don't say it out loud." They stood in silence, the noise of the city growing distant again. Then Alara said, "What exactly do you want from me, Mr. CEO?" And just like that, the barrier was back between them. "What exactly do you want from me, Mr. CEO?" Alexander didn't answer right away. The question hung in the air like frost, sharp, suspended, and daring him to speak with something real. The kind of real he hadn't practiced in years. He lowered his gaze. "Honestly? I don't know yet." Alara crossed her arms, shifting her weight. Behind her, the East Village hummed with its usual life, people passing by, dogs barking, sirens in the distance. But in the narrow gap between them, time slowed. "I just know I felt something, when we talked. When I saw your art. Like you see the world in a way I forgot was possible." "You don't even know me," she said, her voice softer than her posture. "I know that," he replied, then stepped closer, but not too close. "But I want to." Alara glanced at the cup in her hand, suddenly unsure what to do with it. "This isn't a movie, Alexander. You don't get to chase a stranger around the city and call it fate." "No," he said, "but maybe I get to ask if you'd like to share another coffee sometime. And maybe this time, I'll bring the charcoal." A ghost of a smile cracked her seriousness. Just barely. She didn't give him a yes, but she didn't walk away either. Instead, she nodded once and turned toward the art store. "Fridays. I'm here till 6, she said over her shoulder. That's not an invitation. It's just information. Alexander stood still, watching her disappear through the glass door. And just like that, he was left with something more dangerous than rejection, hope. That Friday, he came back. And the next. Not every time with a sketch, but always with time. They talked about books, about art, about how New York made people forget how to be still. Billionaire never asked about his company, and he never offered. He liked it that way. For once, he wasn't the CEO. He was just Alex. But walls don't fall without resistance. One afternoon, while she was restocking ink cartridges, she asked casually, "So what exactly do you do?" He hesitated too long. "Finance," he finally said. "Investments." She raised an eyebrow. "Vague. Sounds rich." "Too rich, sometimes," he admitted. "It's not who I am, though." "That's what rich people always say right before inviting you to their penthouse," she teased. He laughed. But she wasn't entirely joking. The balance between them had shifted. That night, back in his penthouse, Alexander stared out over the city. He thought of telling her the truth, that he wasn't just rich, he was the Alexander March, CEO of March Technologies, Forbes listed, and, on paper, entirely out of her league. But something in him rebelled against it. He didn't want to be admired. He wanted to be seen. The next day, Billionaire didn't show up for her shift. And not the day after that, either. When he asked the clerk, the guy shrugged. Said she needed space. Left this. He handed Alexander a torn sketchbook page. It was a drawing of Alexander at the cafe table, brow furrowed, coat slightly open, eyes lost in thought. At the bottom, a note in soft graphite. "I like you better before you lied." He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he pulled up every detail he could find about her. Not to stalk, but to understand. To find the path back to honesty. Her portfolio. Her exhibitions. Her old street murals in Brooklyn. She wasn't hiding. She was just done waiting. So Alexander did something completely against every instinct he'd ever honed. He stepped back. He canceled his gala appearances. He declined the panel invites. For 3 weeks, he gave her space. And then, he painted. Charcoal, watercolor, whatever he could get his hands on. Clumsy, raw, a mess. But real. And on the 4th week, he mailed it, one canvas, and signed. A girl on a bench, coat too big for her shoulders, sketchbook on her lap, but eyes facing forward, as if she saw the future. It said nothing. It said everything. She showed up at the cafe one snowy morning, holding the painting in one hand, and something unreadable in her eyes. Alexander spotted her from his seat by the window. The snow was gentle but relentless, dusting the city in quiet silver. He blinked twice, unsure if she was real or just wishful memory taking shape in the frost-glazed glass. But she didn't fade. Billionaire walked in slowly, her boots wet, her scarf wound tightly around her neck, and the painting clutched against her chest like a question that demanded answering. He stood before she reached the table. Neither of them said anything. She set the canvas down, face up. "It's not very good," he offered. "No," she agreed. "But it's honest." She sat. He followed. There was something unfamiliar in the way she held herself, not anger, not quite distance either. More like a new boundary, freshly drawn but not closed. "I've been thinking," she said, brushing melting snow from her coat sleeve. "Maybe I reacted too quickly." "You reacted truthfully," he replied. "I thought you were just another bored rich man playing pretend," she said. "And maybe I was right." He swallowed. "I wasn't pretending with you. You didn't tell me with me, either." Silence nestled between their words. "I didn't want the version of me that comes with headlines," he finally said. "I wanted to show you who I was without all that noise. And yet, the noise is part of your life. Part of you." Alexander leaned back slightly. It is. But I didn't want it to drown you before I could even introduce myself. She nodded once, like a teacher hearing a half-right answer. I know what it's like to be reduced to someone else's version of you, she said. I've been the gallery girl, the mural kid, the bohemian with no future. I get it. But, he prompted. But I never lied about it. That one cut deeper than he let show. I'm not asking for a second chance, he said quietly. I'm asking for space in your life where truth can grow. Even slowly. Even awkwardly. Elara looked down at the coffee he'd instinctively ordered for her. Almond milk, 1 sugar. He remembered. Her fingers wrapped around the cup. You're lucky I like almond milk, she murmured. He smiled, just barely. The next days unfolded cautiously. They met in public, cafes, bookstores, the museum. No penthouses. No chauffeurs. Just city blocks and bus stops. Alexander took the subway for the first time in 15 years and got lost once, but didn't complain. One evening, as they walked through the Met, she paused in front of a painting by Childe Hassam. You see this, she said, pointing to the figures blurred into sunlight. Everyone thinks it's just impressionism. But if you look closer, you'll see it's not just the light that hides them. It's choice. He painted what he wanted people to feel. Not what was technically true. Are you saying that's what I did? He asked. I'm saying, she said gently, you chose to let me feel something safe. That's not the same as lying. But it's not the whole truth either. Alexander considered this, his hands folded behind him. Then maybe it's time you met the rest of my truth. She didn't reply right away. He turned toward her. Will you come to my office? Tomorrow. No secret. No act. Just, see what I really do. She hesitated. Not from fear, but from history. I will, she finally said. But I'm not promising to stay. I'm not asking you to, he replied. Just to see. The next morning, she stood at the base of the March Technologies Tower. Chrome and glass, 72 stories tall. His name was etched across the archway like a signature he never got to take back. She stepped through the revolving doors. Everyone inside knew who she was. No one stopped her. When the elevator opened, Alexander was already waiting, not in a tailored suit but in rolled-up sleeves and an open collar. You ready? He asked. Elara exhaled. No. But I'm here. They walked through engineering labs, creative floors, quiet corners where his employees sketched ideas on whiteboards and coded things she didn't understand. He didn't show her power. He showed her process. She saw a different man there, still decisive, still brilliant, but one who listened more than he spoke. Afterward, he led her to a rooftop garden. Quiet. Hidden. Alive even in the cold. I come here when I need to remember who I am, he said. She watched him in profile, city rising behind him like ambition made steel. I believe you, she said, almost surprised by her own words. He turned. You do? I think I'm starting to. The wind shifted. She stepped forward. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down, her face changed. What's wrong? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she showed him the screen. It was a photo, blurry but unmistakable. A shot of them from the museum, clearly taken without their knowledge, posted on a gossip site with the headline. CEO's mystery girlfriend, is she just the flavor of the month? Her voice was quiet, but steady. I told you I never wanted to be someone's headline, Alexander. The photo blurred on her screen, but the damage had sharp edges. Elara's knuckles whitened around her phone as the city spun below them. Rooftop serenity turned to public exposure in one notification. The air between them grew colder than the December breeze. Alexander's face drained of color. I didn't do this. I didn't say you did, she said, looking away. But your world did. Let me fix it. She gave a sad smile. That's the problem, you think everything broken needs fixing. He took a breath, then another, choosing words carefully. This wasn't supposed to happen. Alara turned sharply toward him. What exactly was supposed to happen? You hide your name, show me rooftop gardens, feed me almond milk lattes, then what? I slip neatly into your life without anyone noticing? He didn't respond. Alexander, she said more gently, I don't belong in magazines. I don't want my art judged by the shape of my face or the cut of my coat. I came from nothing. And I built something, quietly, messily, honestly. I know, he said. That's what drew me to you. She laughed bitterly. Then why does being with you feel like erasing myself? Downstairs, the world spun on, digital, relentless. The article had already been shared 5,000 times. The top comment read, another starving artist lands her big break. Must be nice. He offered her the only thing he had left, space. Walk away, he said softly, if that's what you need. I won't stop you. I'll protect your name. I'll call in every favor I've never asked. I'll make it disappear. I don't want you to make it disappear, she whispered. I wanted it never to exist. She didn't walk away right then. But she didn't stay either. They rode the elevator in silence. No words. Just reflections in mirrored walls, her grief, his guilt, their distance growing with every floor. Outside, snow fell again. In the following days, Alexander disappeared from public view. March Technologies issued no statement. Alara removed her exhibit from the local gallery. The city moved on, as it always did. But the story lingered. One night, Alara sat on her apartment floor, scrolling through old photographs. Her mother's hands holding clay. Her first mural on the cracked brick wall behind the deli. And one blurry photo someone had taken of her and Alexander in a bookstore, unaware. They were laughing. That was the real headline. She picked up a brush she hadn't touched in weeks. She painted for hours. She painted until it hurt. Then she slept. Meanwhile, at the March boardroom, Alexander faced a different reckoning. Investors weren't concerned about romance, they were worried about distraction. Your name is a brand, they said. You need to control the narrative. He said nothing. He handed in a statement the next morning, no comment. My personal life remains my own. A week passed. Then two. Then came the gallery's surprise invitation, Winter Revival, a new collection by Alara Monroe. The room buzzed with anticipation. Alara wore no designer. Just navy wool and paint under her nails. She unveiled her collection. All cityscapes. But hidden in each, on a rooftop, in a bus window, beneath snow-covered branches, was a figure. Sometimes blurred. Sometimes clear. Him. But not the CEO. The man who watched quietly. Who listened. Who gave her almond milk without asking. Reviewers called it haunting. Raw. Honest. They asked her afterward, are the rumors true? She replied simply, some stories aren't meant to be headlines. Later that night, he stood outside the gallery. He hadn't come in. But she saw him. He turned to leave. She stepped out. Alexander, she called. He turned. The sidewalk was wet, the night thick with possibility. You didn't come inside. You looked like you didn't need me to. I didn't, she said. But I wanted to. He blinked, unsure. She walked down the steps and stood before him. It's still complicated, she added. I don't want simple, he said. I want true. The snow began to fall again, slow, wide flakes that blurred the sharpness of the world. They stood close, not touching, but something between them softened. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. My next mural, she said. It's a collaboration. With who? She looked at him. With the one person who finally stopped trying to fix me, and just let me be. He realized, she hadn't just forgiven him, she had invited him into her world. The paper in Alexander's hand trembled slightly, not from cold but from the weight of what it meant. Ilara's sketch was fluid and layered, bold rooftop outlines with streaks of fire escape ladders and hanging lights. And in the middle of it all, two silhouettes side by side. Not facing the city. Facing each other. He looked up at her. "You want me to paint?" She gave a half-smile. "I want you to try. I haven't picked up a brush since kindergarten." "Then you're overdue." They met every Sunday on the east-facing rooftop of a community center in the Lower East Side. The mural was approved by the director. Ilara had insisted it remain open to public viewing, not gallery curation. The theme was, "What We Carry." Alexander arrived in jeans and a hoodie, stripped of polish, not because he had something to prove, but because the paint always found a way through. The first day, he splashed the primer wrong. The second, he knocked over a tray of cobalt blue. The third Sunday, she handed him a brush without saying a word. And for the first time, he didn't overthink it. He made a mark. Then another. Then stopped. She leaned in. "Not bad." "Really?" "No. But it's honest." They laughed, and for a few moments, the world tilted back toward joy. Each week, more of the mural came to life. A broken clock embedded in a skyline. A child's toy left on a stoop. A pair of tired shoes under a park bench. Ilara's pieces told the stories people forgot to tell. Alexander's lines were more tentative, but she never corrected him. Only encouraged. In that quiet routine, something fuller bloomed between them. Not the fire of new love, but the calm of something earned. One afternoon, an older man with a camera approached. "Mind if I take a shot?" Alexander stiffened. Ilara didn't flinch. "Go ahead." Click. 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 Later that evening, she posted one on her private account, just the mural, no tags, no faces. The caption, "Built from scratch. Painted by truth." He stared at it longer than he meant to. By December's end, the mural was finished. A small crowd gathered for the final stroke. Children pointed. Neighbors nodded. Someone cried. But no speeches were made. No ribbon cut. Just a shared silence that felt fuller than applause. Afterward, Alexander stayed behind to clean the brushes. Ilara wiped her hands on a rag and joined him. For a moment, the city fell away. "I have to tell you something," he said finally. She looked over, curious but calm. "I turned down the Shanghai expansion," he said. "It was finalized, but I backed out." "Why?" "Because I was building something that looked impressive on paper. Not something that mattered." Her voice was quiet. "And now?" "Now," he said, "I'd rather build walls people can stand in front of. Like this." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned her shoulder gently against his. The quiet between them didn't need explaining anymore. Then her phone vibrated. A message. She frowned. "What is it?" he asked. She handed it to him. It was a forwarded screenshot from a friend. Corporate espionage rumors swirl at March Technologies, internal leak traced back to someone in the CEO's circle. Alexander's eyes narrowed. "I've told no one about us." "Not even the board," he said. "But someone clearly knows," she replied. A second message arrived. "They're saying you leaked the gallery collaboration to inflate your public image." Ilara's face fell. "I never would." "I know," he said firmly. "But we need to find out who would." Outside, the mural stood tall and defiant against the gray winter wall. But inside them both, storm clouds gathered. Someone was trying to fracture what they'd barely finished building. "Then it's time we find out who's rewriting our story." They began with silence, the kind that brews between two people when the stakes are too high for small talk. Elara had pulled her hair back into a tight braid, eyes focused. Alexander moved with a new precision, calm, deliberate, and cold as steel. The gallery owner, Celeste, had been unusually quiet since the mural went viral. She was the only one with access to both Elara's submission records and Alexander's PR calendar. Elara remembered an offhand comment Celeste had once made, something about positioning art where the right eyes would see it. At the time, it sounded aspirational. Now, it echoed like a threat. They visited the gallery under the pretense of reviewing proposals for a new show. Alexander smiled warmly at the receptionist. Elara wandered, pausing by the glass wall that faced the street. No cameras there. No eyes but theirs. Celeste emerged, crisp as ever in a black pencil skirt and velvet scarf. "Darling," she said, addressing Elara. "I heard you've been very busy with exterior work." Alexander gave a courteous nod. "And I heard you've been busy repackaging artists." Celeste's smile didn't waver, but the glint in her eye sharpened. "Come now, Alexander. You're not suggesting I had anything to do with that nonsense online?" "I'm suggesting," he said smoothly, "that leaks don't happen in vacuums. They happen in rooms with doors slightly ajar." Elara reached into her bag and pulled out a small recording device. "I record all my consultations now," she said calmly. "After my first solo show was recurated without my consent." The color drained from Celeste's face. Alexander leaned forward. "We already traced the email that linked the mural to March Tech's PR firm. The IP led back here. That proves nothing." "It proves curiosity," he said. "And motive. Which, in the right hands, is enough to start a conversation." Celeste folded her arms. "You came here to corner me?" "No," Elara replied. "We came here to cut the strings." Celeste didn't respond. But her silence wasn't denial, it was defeat. By evening, Elara and Alexander sat on a bench overlooking the river. The sky was lavender, the city's noise dulled into something almost tender. "So, now what?" she asked. He looked at her, not with answers, but with quiet conviction. "I don't know if I can fix everything," he admitted. "But I know I don't want to build anything that requires hiding you." Elara exhaled slowly, a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding since that first rooftop sketch. "I never needed saving," she said. "Just someone who didn't look away." Alexander nodded. They stayed like that until dusk, until the street lamps flickered on and cast golden halos over the sidewalks. Weeks passed. The mural became more than art, it became a meeting place, a backdrop for proposals, birthday photos, and quiet reflection. People tagged it online with quotes, some misattributed, most heartfelt. Elara started mentoring younger artists. Not through galleries, but at the community center. She taught them about lines, but more about truth. Alexander stepped down from expansion leadership, redirecting funds to urban creative spaces. When asked why, he simply replied, "Because growth should be visible in more than just numbers." One evening, he received a message from his father. Just 2 lines. "Saw your face on the news. You look like your mother. She'd be proud." Alexander read it once, then twice. Then he smiled and closed the phone without replying. Some things didn't need words. On the anniversary of the mural's completion, Elara and Alexander stood in front of it again. This time, no brushes. Just presence. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Which part?" "Letting the world in." He looked at the painting. At the broken clock. The park bench. The 2 silhouettes. And then at her. "No," he said. "Because this time, we wrote the ending ourselves." And as the city lights danced across the water, they stood in silence, 2 artists, 1 canvas, and a story no one else would ever rewrite.